the next we have this particular the next topic, that what exactly we have, that like configure OpenShift networking for application. It means what exactly we are going to do that. Let's assume we have my node, that could be a worker node or something else, right? And inside that, what exactly we have, that we have my pods, right? We can see we have like pod 1, pod 2 and so on, so on, right? So whenever we are going to create a pod, so the pod having some kind of IPs, correct? What exactly we have, that the pod having some kind of IPs. So you need to configure that, like what type of IPs or what type of ranges that pod have assigned those things, right? That we can configure with the help of CIDR, right? That what we exactly we have, that the pod CIDR. It means, if you remember, then let's assume we have my nodes, right? So when we describe the node, let's suppose my master node, like also describe node, and then we have like master 01, right? So we have like a sections for the pod CIR, see, right? So we have options for those, like whenever you go to create a pod, then pod having this kind of IPs assigned that. We have like a pod limitations, then in the network sections, here they mention that the pod CIDR. So this is my host IP, my host name, CPU's limitation for the pod, okay, the system informations. Okay, so in this version they are not mentioned those points, but what I'm trying to mention that is not available in this version when we trying to create this application. So what exactly I'm trying to mention, that when we create a pod, then we need to specify first before create a pod, like whenever we are going to create a pod, that pod have this kind of IPs address. Let's suppose like something 244.0.0 something like that, right? /16, all those things. It means what, the system will automatically assign IP from this particular ranges, right? And that we are going to define with the help of SDN. That what exactly we have, that the software defined network. So remember that, especially when we're talking about the Red Hat product and Red Hat services and all, right? So Red Hat always use for their network model and network services, they use their own services that known as a SDN. What exactly we have, that we have like a software defined network, right? So in that sections, or in this particular scenario, when you're talking about the OpenShift environment, so OpenShift use SDN to manage their networking infrastructures, right? Even though you can use the same thing in the OpenShift, or lot of tools and services we have that, right? That you can implement those SDN services inside those parameters and then those sections. So what exactly we have, that we have SDN, correct? So how SDN is going to work that? So in the SDN there are two components, right? The first component that we have like control plane, okay, and then the second that known as a data plane, correct? What exactly we have, that we have two types of component that are available inside this particular mechanism, the control plane and data plane. So what exactly the control plane, when we're talking about those, right? So in the same system, if you notice now, what exactly they are saying, that, right, we have two component, control plane and data plane, right? So when we're talking about the traffic, handle the traffic, right? So the managing of traffics and all those things, right, that known as your control plane. We simple mention that what we can say, it decouple the software that handle the traffic, that we have like a control plane, and what the data plane exactly we can say, right, that route the traffic, right? So again what we can mention that, right, an underlying mechanism, right, that mechanism that route the traffic, that known as a data plane. So again this is a software mechanisms, right, that hold your SDN, right? So every applications or every services, when you're talking about those communications and then those services, so we have like two things, right? What exactly we have, that we have like a control plane and data plane. Even though in the OpenShift, in the Kubernetes, or in the Red Hat, in the OpenStack technologies, these software are going to use that, right? With the help of these two components, what we can do, we can simply manage and maintain entire containers applications, or we can say their pod, or we can say their applications containerized orchestration mechanisms, right? So if you guys notice now what exactly they are saying, that we're talking about those SDN, right? So OpenShift implement a software defined to manage their network infrastructures, right, for the clusters and their user applications, right? So what exactly the SDN is? A software, we can say it's like a software networking model, right, that allow to communicate all the network devices, like we have like earlier routers, switches and so on. So the same thing we have like that, but again it's like a software mechanism. We have a two component, right? So that handle the traffic, that known as a control plane, and then that route the traffic, that known as a data plane. And what's the advantage, then we can say that, right? So when we're talking about the advantage and so on, so again, so managing the traffic and network resources programmatically, so that organization's team can decide how to expose their applications, that we can mention that. And again, by default SDN allowed to communicate the content each other. It's a by default happening, right? What I'm trying to mention that, or what the parameter of this particular section, it means, let's assume right? So let's assume that we have actually two namespace. Sorry, first we have, like, let's suppose one namespace, right? And inside the namespace, right, we have a two pods, pod 1 and pod 2. So what by default we have that, again, these pods are by default able to communicate with each other. It's a by default happening, right? We don't need to do anything, right? How they communicate? They communicate with the help of their local host mechanisms, correct? So this is by default happening. Even though if you have a different namespace, let's assume that, right, if we have like different namespace, and inside the namespace what exactly we have, that we can say we have like 1 and 2 and so on, right? So what we can mention that this is also by default happening, right? So we can say what, the pod to pod communications, right, and namespace to namespace communication is by default available inside your Kubernetes and OpenShift, right? So these machines able to communicate with these machines, we can say that, and also these machines, even though this is also able to communicate with these machines and also with this machines, and vice versa, we can say that, right? So what they are mentioning, that with the help of these mechanisms, internally pod able to communicate, internal, not external, I'm talking about that, right? So internally communication between the container that run in the same project or in the different one, not a problem, right? And even the C, communication between the pod, whether they belongs in the same project or in a separate project, not a problem, right? They also by default communicate with each other. And now managing network communication from a pod to services, it means if you create a services with the help of deployment or something like pod, they are also able to communicate with each other. This is also possible, correct? So these are some point that SDN by default allowed in this particular OpenShift and the services, what exactly we have that, or what we are trying to mention that, right? So even though for accept of this particular OpenShift, like maybe in the interview asked that, okay, so accept of SDN, what other networking model we can use that? So except of SDN, you guys can use a OVN, right? That is a open virtual network, so that is by default available inside the Kubernetes, right? And except of that, you guys can use the also courier. What you can use that? You can use KURYR, courier, right? So this is also a networking model, you can use that, right? In upper versions, or we can say there's another application that we have like Multus, right? But that we are not going to discuss now. We have another option, we'll discuss that, right? So which we have that, so we have like a Multus as well, right? Multus, we have a session, we'll discuss that the next topic, not now, but again, this is a by default available inside the 4.10 and other versions, right? Multus they introduced in 4.12, so we'll discuss how we can configure the Multus with that particular drivers and their communications, right? So this is a point and all those things, what exactly we have that, again, in these sections or in this scenario, when we're talking about this communication with each other, the applications and then their services, so we have this particular networking model, and with the help of these things, the pod to pod communications, pod to the other namespace communications, pod to services, or we can say, or externally if you allowing those same thing, it available to communicate for the same thing, right? So this is a way that we can configure accordingly, right? And yeah, this is a network model. See, we have like OpenShift SDN, then we have OVN Kubernetes, and then we have courier as well. So see, in the 4.10, both SDN and OVN are default network provider, right? But again, we have all the another option like courier and all those things, we can use that as well. correct. Now, so if you notice now what we have that, see, so let's suppose we have like node 1, node 2 and node 3, right? And even though we have like different project, so what by default we have that they all are able to communicate with each other. It's a by default happening, right, with the help of their local network services, or we can say their communication, that what exactly we have that with the help of those things they are able to communicate, right? So what exactly we have there is a small topic, right? I mean this particular sections, right? So in that section what exactly we are going to do, that we are going to simple access those applications, right? And then application should be accessed properly, right? So if you guys remember one more thing, right, the first point we have like deployment when we are trying to create any applications, right? So if you remember what exactly we have there, we have this command, like which command, command, right? So this command automatically creates some component for you. What component? We can say we have like deployment, correct? So I'm just mentioning that how they are going to communicate with each other. So we have deployment. So once we create a deployment, the deployment will create some another component, like what? So they will create a replica set for you, right? They will create a pod for you, I mean services, replica set and pod for you, correct?
Yeah.
So that we can say this is my service, this is my replica set, and this is my pods, correct. Now, so what parameter we have that, let's suppose that when we in the opposite, what exactly we have that, right? So when we expose, like what exactly command we have, a OC expose, right? So it will create a root for me, right? The root means what we have that, we have a URL. So let's suppose that this is my root. Now your customer or client, let's suppose this is my customer or client, right? And this client, or in the, let's suppose in the public or somewhere else, maybe in the different network, not a problem, right? They are accessing on this particular route, right? Now your route are connected with which service? We have like a something SVC1, let's assume that, right? So once we expose, the system will automatically create a route for you. So when the end users are hitting on this particular route point, right, the systems, this route connected with this service, with these services, right? So now this service hold the record of endpoint IP. What they hold the record? Endpoint IP, right? Endpoint IP means what we can say, the pod IP, correct? It means let's assume that we are on the external machines and we are hitting on the services, right? So in the single system or in the single namespace, you can create a lot of services, right? Then how this service are getting request, or we can say how exactly we are calling those packets from this particular pod, right? So this is happening with the help of endpoint IP. So endpoint IP means we can say this is my pod IP, and they all are able to communicate with the help of their labels value. Which value? Labels. Guys, clear with that? Yes, no?
Okay. Yes.
Right? So they are able, all are able to create with the help of labels value, right? It means let's assume that what exactly when we create a deployment, right? And here we set the deployment like app is equal to, let's suppose, Nginx, right? So when we create this particular application, something like Nginx and all, right? And so by default deployment will assign all the label, I mean this label to every application, like for this particular service as well, to replica set as well. Okay, they assign this to Nginx as well, and then to pod as well, correct? It means when anyone hit on this particular route, right, the system will verify that I'm connected with which pods, right? So the service and then the pod having the same kind of what label. If we have a different label and all those things, right, then you are not able to access your page. Why? Because we have some different label, and let's suppose that they have a different label, like for example they having like app is equal to something cloud, right? So now this service are searching for that pod, entire the applications or entire system that having, or entire project we can say that, right? So we can say that service is searching for that pod that have this label app is equal to cloud. But in your environment, right, or in your project, if they, I mean, this service did not find any kind of pod with this label, then we do not have any kind of endpoint. It means when you're trying to access the applications, we are going to get a we are getting a message like what? Applications not found. Clear with that? Right. So in the exam there is a question from this particular point. In the exam the pod is running, everything is running proper way, right, but when you trying to access your application from the root, right, then application is not accessible. Why? Because the label is not going to match that. Done? Yes, no? I'll give example. So what exactly we have that? Let's assume we have some project like OC new project, something demo SVC, something like that. Okay, so now I think I don't have any kind of resource inside this particular application. So what I'm going to do that, right, I'm going to simply create applications like OC new app. By default what we have that OC new app, and hyphen name I'm just mentioning like Nginx, and use a which image, let's suppose that Nginx, correct. So if okay, so we have a limitations issue still, it will take 72 hours to complete that. No worry, let me use my lab images. Any image we can use that, not a problem. Okay, let me use these images for now. Okay. Okay, so here we have a Nginx applications, right, with the name of Nginx and all, right. So if you notice now here we got those component, right, OC get all. So what exactly we have that? See, we have pod, we have a services, we have a deployment, and we have replica assets, correct, and it's downloading images for you as well. So now if you notice we have a deployment. So one of one is running, okay, and then we have my node as well, sorry, not node, pod, okay. So this is my pod is running now, correct. Now what exactly we have that here, even though we got a service as well, correct. Now so if you notice now what by default we have that every applications have a same label, right. So if I describe my deployment and my deployment name, and here I'm going to filter the kind of labels, the syntax. See, so what label exactly we have that, correct. Now so you can assign a multiple label to a single component. It's not about the single, right. If you have that, then you can assign a multiple label to this particular pod or services. Clear? So this is my label. Similarly, if I get my pod, and even though you can also use get pod and hyphen, you can mention like show labels. See, so what label they have that? See, deployment is equal to Nginx is a default, they will assign that, right. And even though OC describe replica set, and this is my replica set that have something OC get RS, yeah, the last one. So OC describe replica set, then we have a Nginx something 6, right. So see, we have, sorry, I need to describe those things. Let me filter graph -I something content like labels, labels. Okay, see, so deployment is equal to Nginx for this label as well, the pod having the same label, and then the deployment having the same label, correct. And now once you verify like OC describe, correct, service, and what service name? Nginx. See, so what exactly we have that label selector here, and then guys, clear with that? So what exactly IP we have that? So this is my pod IP. It means -O wide. If I just show with you guys, right? So see, this is my pod IP. It means what? If anyone hit on this particular IP, so this is my service IP. Or what you can do that you can simply create a root. So we got a URL, right? It means if anyone hit on this particular IP, the packet are going to access from this URL, right? Why they are fetching those things? Because in our system the service label and pod label are same, correct. It means What I'm going to do that, I'm going to simply expose my service, right? So once you expose those things, here we got a root. See, here we get a root, the URL, right? It means what? It means once you hit on this URL, maybe in the browsers and all those things to access your applications, right? Then the application should produce some output. By default, we have something like Nginx welcome message, I guess so, right? So once I hit this URL on this particular system, see, we have a hello pages and all, right? Now what we have that, why? Because they all are able to, they all have the same label and all, correct? Now for the testing purposes, in the exam, what exactly we have that, right? So for the testing purpose, what I'm going to do that, I'm going to simple change my service label to get that error. So this is by default happening in the exam, no need to do that, we need to fix that. So I'm going to simple not describe, I'm going to simple edit my service. Let's suppose that, so what the service we have that, so OC edit service, and service name is Nginx C, right? So I'm just simple changing my selector. So we have deployment, I'm just mentioning something like Nginx something like that, something like that. Okay, save and exit. So once you hit enter, see now, so we have a different label, and now when we describe this SVC, see, none, right? Why? Because the applications are trying to fetch this label, correct? What they mentioned that they are trying to fetching, searching this label, and in your current namespace there is no such pod that having this label, right? Maybe if you need, then what you can do, you can simply change your pod label, and once those both label are going to match that, the applications are accessible, correct? It means what? It means now if you're trying to search those applications, now we have a applications warning issues, correct? It means why? It means the applications, everything is proper way, right? But when we hit on this particular URL or IPs, right, then the service don't have any kind of endpoint IP, or because there is no any pod that are going to respond you for, right? We have pod, everything is running properly, but the point what we have that, the pod having a different IP, correct? So in the exam, what you need to do that, right, you can verify that everything is running proper way, right? In the exam too, you can verify that your pod is running, we have a service also, everything is in a proper way, right? But again, once you're trying to with the help of root, once you hit on this root, you are getting this kind of error message. So what you need to do that, first you need to check the pod label in the exam, either you can check the pod label, deployment label and all those things, and check that, yeah, they have like deployment is equal to Nginx, and but again the services have a different label. OC describe service, and then the service name, see, we have a different label. What you can do then in the exam here, or in the exam, edit your service and then fix that, or fix that whatever we have that. So we have like something, this one. So it's up to you, like either you can change the deployment label, so once you change the deployment label, system will automatically change everything, right? Or what you can do, you can simply fix that label, and once you fix that, now describe those things. See, here we got a IP, done, that labeling with the that match with the label, and now refresh those application is accessible now. And even though once you scale, even though like OC scale deployment, that we have Nginx number of replicas, what I need, that I need 3 replicas, right? So if you notice now, see, okay, it's in the creating state, I guess so. OC get pod, okay, so creating state. So once it's running, right, we got a 3 pod IP, endpoint IP, correct? Because again they are able to, okay, see, why? Because every, I mean those pod have the same label that what I have that, that's why they are able to connect with each other, right? So it's all about the labeling concept. If you have a different label and all those things, right, they are not able to communicate with each other, right? And even though you can also change or set the label of your applications from those deployment, because deployment is the main parameter. See, so what exactly we have there, so these are a labeling concept, right? So with the help of these parameter and these sections and services, you can change and you can deploy, I mean you can specify those things, right? So if you notice now, we have this label, see, So what we have that label nginx. Now if you make sure, like I'm just mentioning like nginx something hyphen test, I'm setting this label, right? It means what? See, now save and exit, right? So once you're trying to save these things, right, we having this, see. So it is you need to change with the help of command line, right? Because again, this is incorrect parameter. This will discard all your changes, or we can say this is not all, I mean this terminate all your productions parameter services. So this up to you, like you want to change something, right? So you can change manually of your services and fix those label of your services, right? Because again, pod are going to manage with the help of this parameter, or even though if you trying to change your pod label, right? Let's suppose OC edit pod and nginx something 52, the first one I'm trying to change that, right? So here we have like labels, bells, right? To see what we have, that we have like label is equal to, we have two label, right? Like deployment is equal to nginx, and pod template has something like that, right? See, if you're trying to change something like 1111 and so on, see, save and exit, right? So if you notice now, what exactly we have that, see, it's creating a new pod, new container, right? And this is a different thing. Why we have a 4 pod? Because we manually change this one, correct? And the deployment have a different label. So the system will check that no, we have a 3 pod that have a same label. The system will delete, system will automatically discard that pod from our environment and create a new pod for you, right? It means if you notice now with IPs and all those things, right? So in this parameter, when you describe the services, we have a 4 pod in this with the same concept, with the same thing, right? But see, we have a 3 pod, right? This pod is not our member. Which one? The 21 now. Why? Because they have a different label. Guys, get it? Right? The OC get pod, if you notice now, hyphen show hyphen label, see. So these have a same level like deployment nginx, but they have a different thing. So it's not in our part. So specifications, right? For those when we're talking about those deployment, right? So we have this label for my selector, see, deployment label my selectors, correct? So once you change these parameters, this will apply to all the systems and then their sub component as well, correct? Either you have another options while creating the deployment, you can mention that like you can mention with the help of -l options, right? I mean like that. So like if you don't want to use the default table and all, right? So what you can mention, create deployment with label, right? So see, we have these sections as well. So what we can do that, I mean deployment, I mean with the help of command you can mention that, and see we have this deployment, right? And this is my replicas match label app nginx, right? And this is my label for our entire system. So that should be same actually for another applications, right? Or in the OpenShift as well you can use that, right? Or we can mention, command is not there, I guess so. Deployment, you can mention -l options like that to create those labels. It's not there. Deployment name images, let me check the syntax, should be there. It's not available directly those options in the Kubernetes OC new app -help. So what argument they mentioned that? Yeah, see, we have a label, we have option for the same, right? How we can mention that? Like OC new app -name, something named like test -image, something named like nginx and all, right? Then -label, what we mentions like test is equal to cloud and so on, right? So what they're trying to mention that, see, We mentioned that what label? Correct. So creating a resource
Cloud.
with the label, what label? Test
Cloud.
is equal to cloud. Now OC get deployment. If not mention, the system will automatically take that. So OC get pod and OC get pod. The pod name we have a test hyphen show label. See, so what we have that test, right? And then even though so we have like different deployment, and see deployment test pod templates by default these two, and now we have a what? So this is my label. So even though once you describe SVC, so the test is my SVC, I guess so, right? So what exactly we have that? See, selector. So what exactly we have that? Test is equal to cloud. Done. And even though once you describe the it's up to you actually. If you want to use your own labels and all, so you can describe in that way. So pipe grab hyphen I and what's my deployment name? No, I need to search the labels. Labels. See, right? Okay, so once you describe in the under section, we got a labels and concept. Clear with that? Yeah. So this is a command to create the machines without with the label. It's not available in this particular book, but yes, you guys can use that. Okay, I will share with you separately. I think this command is not copy and paste from this. It's not going to paste. No worry, I will share with you separately. Clear with that? Yeah, right. So again, if the service is not going to match that, then application is not going to access. So make sure if you are trying to access those applications, the application should be have the same labels and the same configurations, right? So this is a small example. Just quickly, I'll just give you the scenario base, right? So let's assume that okay. So let's assume that what I'm going to do that in this particular lab, right? We have like Node.js applications. We need to access that application. So what exactly we have that? Deploy or to do Node.js applications, right? Create a route to expose an application services, okay? And but application is not going to accessible. So what we need to do that? We need to troubleshoot that, right, with the help of debug and all those things. I mean, you need to verify and then update the changes, maybe if whatever they have maybe occurred and all those things. It's up to you, like how you can create that, right? So for that, what they are doing that, simple C, we are simple creating an applications with the help of file mechanism, right? And everything is running fine, get pod and everything running fine, right? To access those things, what we are doing, we are simple configuring some applications. We are copying data from source to in my container. Now, when you're trying to access those applications with the help of this particular particular services, right? See, we expose those applications with the help of this name and trying to expose, but the application is not accessible, right? So what they are doing that, they're simple verifying those communications and all those things, the pod IP and everything, if you want to verify that, right? But what problem they have, the services. So what they are mentioning that, right? You need to verify that the services have those proper label or not. So verify that with the label. So show me the label of my this pod. So right, so it shows that yeah, this is a pod label and all, right? And now just check the services that have proper way and everything should be connected. Describe those things and check the label. They are different thing, right? So if you notice now, notice the value of the service selector that indicate to which pod service should be forward packet. So if you notice now, they have some label like name is equal to API, but what I need that, I need something different thing, right? So describe the deployment, they have a different label. See, right? Editor services, now set the label is equal to what? Name is equal to front end, and once you save this file, now we got the name and now we got even the endpoint IP. Earlier, if we don't have a proper label, so see, the endpoint IP have a none. After that, trying to access the application produce some kind of output. This is a small example. Clear with that, or I need to show with you guys? So let's assume, okay, let's assume that I'm going to create a new project like OC project, something name like what they mentioned, anything you can take that, not a way like you need to use that one. Okay, so let me use namespace like something network SDN. Okay, so this is my project, and if you notice now, I think I don't have any kind of resources. Okay, so what for the testing purposes actually, right, we have actually a declarative file. Okay, in the DO280 under the lab we have installed troubleshoot. Okay, I need to run that lab command. So this lab command will create a sample file for me to create an applications. We have two options: either you can create with the help of declarative way or imperative way. Just we did now, so you can use in that way. So yeah, so if you notice now, okay, just a second of integrate project. Okay, so what exactly we have that? Okay, so if you notice now we have a sample. What sample we have? That the front end and back end applications, right? So let's suppose this is my front end and this is my back end application, and we have some queries written inside. We need to import this query in my back end application. So the first, what I'm going to do that I'm going to simply run my backend. So if you notice now what is exactly inside this particular applications. So see, create a deployment, use the databases images, correct, and use this username path. So they are mentioning the plaintext file, but again to secure these things, what you guys can mention, you can use your secret, right? That similarly mention the plaintext like root password, root username, root password, and all those things, correct. So once you run, it will create deployment and create a services for you. See, right? So if you run this command like not kubectl, we can say oc create -f to do.yaml. Clear with that? So once you hit enter, see we got two things. OC project network STM. Okay, sorry, I need to create the project OC new project network -STM. Okay, now create that. Okay, see, then we got our two things. We got our deployment and then we got our services. If you notice now, right, OC get all, see, so we have my deployment, OC get deployment, okay, OC get service, OC get ports and all those. It's running fine for me, correct? Now, what I'm going to do that, right, I'm going to simple configure the databases. So for that, we have some queries for the sample. If you notice now this queries, what exactly we have that. Then simple drop the table if exists with the name of item. It means we are deleting that table with the name of item, and then create a new table with the name of item, okay, and then add these values, pick up a newspaper and then buy some groceries and all those things. So for that, what you can do that, see, this is my pod, and I'm going to simple copy this sample file into this pod. So OC CP, copy this particular database SQL where, so I have my pod name, and copy under something like any folder, we can say under the MNT, anywhere you can copy that, okay. So what exactly I'm doing that, I have some sample file from my host machines, and from this host machine admin copying the data OCCP command in my container under the MNT folder, correct. Okay, permission in MNT is not allowed for me. Let me use the TMP folder, because MNT is managed by root user and you are copying with the help of normal user, so we are not authorized, correct. So TMP anyone can use that, correct, right. So even though if you want to verify those things, what you can do, you can simple, just for the testing purposes, you can simple go inside this EXEC and -it MySQL and then pass. See, so if you notice now under the TMP folder, we have the data. Which data? That we copy from my source, correct? Then we have a command actually that run this table in my container. So this command, this one, see. So remotely we are running this, or we can say appending this particular databases, right? So log in these machines and then run this command. So we have options. What option we can do that? So MySQL username root, and then we have an item. Okay, so this is my table. Under this table, execute whatever the query we have, that import that. Just like we are simple taking a back, restoring those data. So for what we can do, like MySQL user, we need to mention root, okay, and then we have my table items, okay, and then append that we have a data under the TMP with the what name, with the name of something DB SQL data, correct? Done. See, it's important. Now wanted to verify what you can use that. You can simple go like MySQL hyphen user root, okay, then show me in the item sections, right, and show me that like what we can mention that show tables, right? So you can use like what command we can mention that show, sorry. So this is optional, you can use any applications what they are trying to mention. See, we have item table that they are trying to mention that, right? So this is my backend applications, right? The databases and all those things. Now for the same we have another front-end applications. So what they are trying to mention, if you remember that, or what we already discussed, that if we have a two container, the both container by default reachable with each other with their local host IP, correct? Even though if I show you this label front end, see, so what exactly we have that simple talking about those labels. So if you notice now what we have, this is my front end label. So create deployment with what label, the matching label is something front end and all, right? Even though if you notice on this pod, we have this pod like something pod hyphen show labels, right? So see, we have something, this one label like app node.js and so on, right? Now by default again we have this my two-door front end, right? So this is my applications, right? So I'm creating this lab application with the help of this label, right? And also we are creating a services, but if you notice now the services we intentionally provide a different label. See what we have, that we mentioned something like Node.js and all those things that able to communicate with my backend as well. See, we have a two label for my services, that we have like to do Node.js, and also we have like front end and so on, right? But here what we mentioned, that we provide the incorrect parameter because to check the selectors, correct? Name is got API. It means what? It means we are creating front end applications. See, here we got that application. So if you notice now we have a two part, right? So this is my front end and this is back end. If you hit on this application, the applications are hitting on this particular IP to get the communication with the help of labels, right? So let it run first. Okay, so okay, it's running now, right? And here we got the services as well. We have a two services, front end and back end, right? So do not expose your back end application because let it back end, right? We are users, we need to hit on which application, the front end. So I'm going to expose which application, those front end, correct? To create the root. So what I'm going to do that, I'm going to simply expose my service, that name is front end, right? If you hit enter, system will automatically assign a name something like, but if you need something unique name, then you can mention the hyphen app and host name, so on. So in the exam, if they mention, you can use that. If they're not, you can no need to mention that. What you can do, you can simply mention OC expose service front end, hit enter. See, if you notice now here we got a root of that applications, correct? Now if user hit on this particular URL to access the application, but we have some error message, what we have that exactly? See, we have like application is not available, right? Why? If you notice now, let me show with you guys, right? So OC describe service, we have two services actually, right? OC get service. So once we describe like OC describe service and then service name is MySQL. See, so what we have that have endpoint. It means we have a pod as well, pod hyphen wide. If you notice now, So this is my pod, right, that have about 9.24. So this backend is successfully running. They have an endpoint IP, right? Once I describe my front-end applications, if you notice now, right, so see that we do not have any kind of endpoint IP. It means what we can say, the problem may be where? The problem may be inside your services. We can mention that, right? So how we can check that? So if you notice now, OC get pod, again the command remains same, hyphen show, hyphen show, we can say front end, hyphen show label. So see, we have what label? Something like that, right? We have like name is equal to front end, correct? And once we describe this particular front end applications, right, to see what exactly we have that. So we have like a selector that should be something like this one, like name is equal to front end. So we have a label like app is equal to Node.js and all those things, just leave that, not a problem, right? But the selector, they have that like name is equal to API, but what I need that the name is equal to front end, that what they need that. Okay, so they have these selectors, right? And once you check the pod label of MySQL, see, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Done, right? So what you can do that, you can simply edit your front end applications. Yes. Okay, and in the selector sections, what you can make sure, like what is my pod label selector, so that have a front end, correct? Save and exit. So once you save this file, now describe those front end. See, here we got that proper endpoint IP. It means what? It means now you refresh this application, here we got some message applications. It's up to you. We are not configured those clearly, so that's why we have this message, but again the application is running for me. Clear? So they mention some extra steps, but again what I feel that if you have a different if your endpoint is not getting, if your services don't have a kind of endpoint, then the problem mostly in the labels, selectors, I mean to say. Okay, yeah. Okay. So that's the point they are trying to mention that. So even though you can verify with the help of different logs and everything, right? So everything is running fine, and after that you can verify it's running fine for me. So this is about those services label and selectors. In the exam we have some samples you can use accordingly. In the exam we have questions from the same.